Ascendium's podcast, E-commerce Growth Leaders. In this episode, we sit down with Lindsey Wilson, the founder and CEO of Venice. Lindsey has built a company that's making waves in the wellness industry, offering innovative products designed to support women's gut health and promote overall well-being in their daily lives. Please welcome our guest, Lindsey Wilson.
Lindsey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your journey to founding OWL.
Really, founding the company was an accident. I really just started making bone broth on my own to heal my gut. I was struggling with a lot of digestive issues, and the more I researched on how to heal my gut naturally, I was finding all of these different trains of thought, like low FODMAP, GAPS, autoimmune, AIP, anti-inflammatory diet. Like they all suggested eliminating a lot of common irritants from your diet while you heal your gut. So some of those ingredients were alliums like garlic and onions, and they all also recommended bone broth. And when I went looking for bone broth to incorporate into my routine, I couldn't find any that didn't have garlic and onions. Pretty much anything I found on the shelves had garlic, onion, celery, carrots, maybe parsley. So I was like, that's weird. And so I started making my own. I really didn't like the taste of bone broth. So I started infusing it with a bunch of herbs, roots, vegetables, replaced the garlic and onions with ginger and turmeric, and landed on our signature recipe. And I really just started drinking it every day and saw a lot of internal and external results from that. And my friends started noticing I lost a lot of inflammation, a lot of weight, and they were all like, what are you doing? So I started sharing it with my friends, and from there it just like really organically grew from word of mouth. I put up a post on Facebook that I had some extra jars on hand, and I got like 100 orders in a week. So from there I just like bought some pots and started doing it. And yeah, for the first several years, it was like very organic word of mouth. Then in like 2019 is when we launched our first like paid media effort.
My wife was literally boiling up bones in the kitchen a couple of days ago. Like, I'm very aware of the benefits myself, but it is a lot of work. So yeah, I can definitely see where there's a huge market for this. Do you find the market is growing? Like people seem to be becoming more health conscious and discovering these sorts of things?
I think that definitely wellness as a whole is growing. I think when we started out, there were very few bone broth companies out there, especially like more of a feminine brand like ours. Like everything on the shelves was like Kettle and Fire and Epic and very like male dominated space, and there wasn't a whole lot of innovation in terms of ingredients and that sort of thing within the bone broth category. There's definitely a lot more competition now, a lot of other companies doing different things with broth and getting really creative with their recipes, but we've really moved into more of like a program based company, and we're really well known for our gut reset program, which combines 3 different broths with 3 different shakes designed to drink morning, noon, and night. And there's a lot of other detox programs, cleanses out there, but what we do with our reset is truly unique. We set you up with a certified health coach, so you have like one-on-one support throughout the reset, and it allows for food. I felt like my experience with drinking bone broth and trying the reset was like, once I shifted the focus from losing weight to nourishing my body, the weight loss was a side effect of that shift in mindset. So that's really where I've like leaned heavily into encouraging people to nourish and feed themselves whole, nutrient dense foods rather than restrict and deprive themselves and put the focus on weight loss.
So what's your day-to-day look like? You've got a bit of background in design, PR, marketing. Do you draw from a lot of that?
I think where I add the most value is definitely on the branding, marketing side of things. Really, the last like 18 months has been a lot of learning and coming back to our roots and how we started and getting my voice back front and center, because I feel like we lost something in outsourcing some of that. And I was more focused on growth and the responsibilities of a CEO of like business development and capitalizing the business and reviewing financials and et cetera. And like, that's ultimately not my best skill set or where I provide the most value. We've made a big shift to bringing things back in-house, myself taking on a lot more of the things that I used to do in the beginning. Like I'm taking back over our social media account and that sort of thing, just to bring the brand voice really back front and center, making sure that's like coming across before we focus again on scaling.
And what's that growth journey looked like? Was there anything early on? You said you sort of grew organically. Was there anything that seemed to work better than anything else?
In the beginning, before we did paid media, we had a really robust unpaid partnerships program, which we still have. And that's always been a big driver for us, and building a community and a conversation around all the different experiences people have on the reset, and trying to tell that like story of all of these different health journeys and how our program can really kind of meet you where you're at and help with so many different symptoms and situations, like whether you're young or old or sick or healthy. It can really like kind of meet you where you're at and help in different ways. And even for myself, like every time I do the reset, I have different experience and different benefits. And also just like it goes beyond the physical every time I do it, and more into that like emotional body and resetting, like really holistically mind, body, spirit.
What does that look like tactically? So how are you using UGC, and is that what you're using now?
Yeah. So our unpaid partnerships program, we do some paid partnerships, but typically only after we've vetted somebody as an unpaid partner and find that they like really authentically love the brand and are driving value. And then we'll explore paid partnerships that are more longer term. But for the unpaid, we typically ask for story shares about the experience, product reviews, and a UGC video that will, depending on the video, we will run that as an ad or mash up like a compilation of customer reviews into a mashup UGC ad. In the beginning, I feel like when we started our ad program, we did much more like graphic kind of branded product stuff. And now like I would say 75% of our content for paid media is UGC video ads. And we gather all that content through our unpaid partnership program. We do set all of our partners up as affiliates, so they do make commission on sales.
What would you say were some of the key challenges you've had early on?
Yeah, every phase of the business has different challenges. I feel like that is like similar to my parenthood journey. But in the beginning, it was mostly the manufacturing piece and fulfillment piece of things. We were like trying to keep up with having enough inventory to supply the demand. And I think with achieving more scale, that's shifted into other issues. Like in the beginning, it was like making really setting the team up, like nailing down our kitchen operations, making sure that there were no like delays when we saw a surge in sales with like orders getting backed up. We had a lot of issues throughout COVID with like glass shortages, which affected our production and our inventory levels, and with needing to switch to different packaging options and not like things wouldn't fit correctly in the jars. We had a lot of breakage. So that sort of thing, like making sure that as we grew, we were able to supply our customers with their orders in a timely manner and keep customer satisfaction and retention up. I feel like there were several points in the business where we saw a lot of growth, which was really exciting. But because we were not able to like deliver the product in time or intact, we, during some of those surges, like lost a lot of customers that we acquired for round two. So hindsight's 2020, but those are all like good learning experience. Like the growth is really like not worth it in the end unless the customer is happy.
Yeah,
that
100%.
was like the biggest learning in the beginning.
Yeah. And was there anything that you feel like could have almost derailed things completely during that COVID period?
During the COVID period for us, like people were so concerned about their health and at home with nothing else to spend money on that was a fruitful time for us. People were highly engaged. There wasn't as much competition. Customer cost of acquisition on Meta was low, engagement with influencers and affiliates was high. That's all changed now. Customer acquisition has gone up. Influencers have like way less engagement and ability to drive revenue than they previously did. Like when we first we're starting, we could have a micro influencer with like 40,000 followers drive $50,000 of revenue in a month, where we don't see those types of lifts even from partners that have like 1 million, 3 million followers. Sometimes we don't even see like any direct impact on sales from those partnerships. So that's been challenging to navigate the paid partnership programs because there's such a risk involved with that. So we try to like really make sure that the authenticity is there, that the person really loves the brand, and that they have an audience that's truly engaged in, and that the influencers already kind of talking about similar things. Like we've noticed, for example, like there might be a fashion influencer that has a highly engaged audience, but they never talk about food or wellness. So when we work with them, then like their audience doesn't care about that, So there's a lot of things to look at and consider when selecting partners, but we try to focus on the storytelling aspect and making sure it's somebody that's like, we're able to weave the mission of the brand into their personal story and their personal journey.
With that influencer quality aspect, is there any way you can kind of work out, like, is it actually just because the economy is not as good? So people are still following people, they're still engaged, they maybe still visit, but then they just aren't buying as much at the moment? Or
I honestly think it's more so fatigue with knowing that influencers are getting paid to promote products. And like back when we first started, like you didn't have to disclose whether you were getting paid to talk about a brand. And a lot of the influencers weren't like on payroll from 10 brands a month, and like just every day there is structured and around those partnership deals. Like they were much more like authentically, organically sharing about their day and kind of weaving the products into that. And some influencers still do a good job of that, but I think there's so much more consumer awareness that influencers are essentially just paid advertisers. So I think people don't like have more skepticism about, is this real or not? That's why we try to really focus on the authenticity and the personal story.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I think it's something that I've heard a number of times, that exact kind of take on the influencer space.
Yeah.
Would you say you're quite data driven personally and as a business?
Yeah, I think analyzing data is like a huge part of what we do. I think we could do that even more so. That's not how I'm not naturally inclined to be that way. I'm much more of like a gut driven like person, like intuition and going off of feeling. But over the years, I've learned the importance of data because sometimes that feeling is wrong. So I do try to check myself and make sure that the data supports my belief systems and my like intuition on things. And often it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So that's always like, and especially with ads, I feel like I'm such a visual person too, that when I look at an ad and I think like, oh, this is going to be great, and it doesn't hit, but something that I look at and I'm like, this like doesn't look branded, aesthetically not pleasing, but it performs way better. So that's where I feel like most inclined to look at the data, because like not always, it doesn't always line up with what you would think or what makes sense that would perform in terms of creatives for paid media.
Yeah. So are you more, yeah, that makes sense. So are you more looking at the data on the side of like how the actual how the view rate through an a video ad is going and that kind of thing versus on the website, for example?
I look at both. Like I look at the Shopify, just basic analytics in there, probably primarily, but then we go deeper into every category of the business and I see how things are performing in each channel, like Google, Meta, email, social. Yeah, I mean, there's that, like I'm looking at data and spreadsheets every week to inform decisions, especially when it comes to Meta, because that's just become such a tricky place to make sure like our business relies on being first order profitable. A lot of food companies don't, but we have a higher AOV. So that's always been our, the structure that works best is maintaining that first order profitability. And of course, like also focusing on retention, loyalty, and LTV. But we are, in terms of Meta, like mostly looking at conversion rate, CAC, and AOV. making sure the ratio to CAC and AOV is keeping us in a state of profitability.
Yeah. And are you so you're using your own sort of sheets for that, or that's Shopify analytics there?
We use Shopify, we use Lifetimely, and then we have our own reporting systems as well.
Looking ahead to the next sort of 6 or 12 months, do you have any initiatives going on? How are you going to be driving?
We right now are really kind of in a phase of stabilizing things, cutting back costs as much as we can. We had a down year last year for the first time in the history of the business, and we took out unfavorable debt in order to get through those times. And now we're just like looking to get out of debt and get back into the green this year. I would say actually we're more kind of like scaling back things in order to still achieve that the profitability right now.
What would you say? Yeah, so that would be sort of your immediate challenge and number one priority, just around profitability and I guess cutting waste in terms of ads that aren't performing, channels that aren't performing.
Yeah, I think after 2023, we did 5 million in sales. We planned to do 10 million the next year because that was just our rate of growth. We were growing 50 to 300% year over year for 8 years, and then that didn't happen. So for about 6 months, we tried to like fix this or fix that to get back there. And then, started after a while, like shaving things off and being like, okay, let's restructure the business based on this for the current performance rather than like trying to get back to where we were. And this year we were majorly impacted by the fires because so many of our customers are local and that's a big area for demographics. So we started out really strong in January and then saw a 60% decline overnight in revenue after the fires. That has us like basically back to our plan of still like, getting everything really lean and back to basics for us, like going back to my voice, our internal team, cutting out all agency costs and really like making sure that our loyal customers and our brand voice is getting the most attention before we start to like move towards growth again.
Yeah, that's one of those things being a founder and running a business. You just get these curveballs constantly and you've got to kind of adapt, change plans and yeah,
it's like all about pivoting and problem solving, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you got any advice that you'd give to other founders or aspiring founders in e-commerce?
I feel like persistence and resilience are the two things you need most in order to get through things, like listening to yourself over anyone else. I think because I started this company by accident and have no experience, I think at certain points of growth, I felt like I don't have the experience to know how to do XYZ and put faith in other people who had more confidence than me, but not necessarily like more skills or ability to like grow my brand as well as I could have. And those were really expensive lessons. Every time I've like handed over responsibilities to someone who like convinced me that they knew better than I did because of their confidence, that's always come back to like not have ended up to be a good thing. So like trusting yourself above anyone else, even if you don't have experience, like no one else will care as much about your brand as you do, no matter what, no matter how much equity you give them, you always know best. So like trusting that above anyone else and always like putting your customers first. Like I feel like at a certain point, like things were growing so fast, we were so focused on growth. And in hindsight, like I probably wouldn't have focused so much on growth knowing what I know now, and just focus more on our core customers, our really loyal customers. And as long as you can keep making them happy and like live within your means, keep things lean, the growth will come, but like not to rush into growth until you really have that like solid foundation.
Yeah, really good advice.
Yeah, I think like at the end of the day, we were probably making more money as a $1 to $2 million business than we were as a $5 million business. Right. And I think a lot of people experience that because when you're at the 1 to 2 million stage, like you don't you have no understanding of like all of these like unexpected things that happen when you reach a certain amount of scale, like lawsuits, insurance, workman's comp, like things get more complicated and more expensive at higher levels of scale, and there's all kinds of costs that you don't anticipate. And I think the profitability is more important than the scale, really.
Yeah. Is there something that if you could go back in time and tell yourself like a lesson?
Yeah, that would probably be it. Like you don't have to like grow and do it all overnight. I think for me, I like to like move fast and quick. And like if I feel the momentum, I'll just like go. But just slowing down and thinking things through and focusing on the core mission and the core customers is always gonna like get you farther than just trying to grow for the sake of growth.
Really solid advice. Well, Lindsey, thank you very much for your time. That was
Yeah,
great.
thank you.